Hey class, I am going to give you a brief overview of Illustrator. What I have open here are two of the images that are attached to Chapter 7 in content. This one is called Shape Assignment PDF and this one is called ShapeTemplate.ai. So .ai is the native Illustrator file format. Just like in Photoshop, .psd is native to Photoshop, which means I cannot open an AI file unless I open it into Illustrator, and I cannot open a PSD file unless I open it into Photoshop. Now, in Photoshop, we were saving things as a TIFF or a JPEG in order to be able to view those on any computer if that person's computer does not have the original programs like Illustrator. So in Illustrator, we'll probably mostly save as a PDF or we'll save for web as a JPEG. Okay, so in Illustrator, we have a toolbar that's not much different than Photoshop. This tool right here, though, is just called a selection tool. And all four of these tools right here where that line is, these are all four selection tools. These tools right here are all shape tools and pen tools. These are all the vector tools that we're going to be using. These tools right here are modifier tools, rotate, transform, and do you notice they're all broken up with a little line? These are some symbol fun little tools, and then these are crop tools and move tools and hand tools and eye picker or slice tool to slice for the web. What we're going to do is we're going to start with simple shapes, okay? So down here in this little area with these 6 little icons, pen tool, this is called the curvature tool, type tool, line tool, this is the shape tool, and this is a paintbrush tool. I'm going to go in the shape tool and I'm going to make shapes. Now, if we go all the way down to the bottom of our toolbar, we're going to see these two colors. In Photoshop, those were foreground colors and background colors. So now you're in for kind of a treat because the colors now are fill color and stroke color. So I'm going to double click the fill color and I'm going to change it to a pretty color blue. Now, I see the blue, but the blue has not shown up right here. That means I have to select it. Now that it's shown up, I can use it and I can say OK. So I have a fill color of blue and I have a stroke color, and I'm going to change that. I'm going to double click it and make it a pretty yellow or something. Now you see I can't see the color here, so I have to select here to get that yellow. So if I wanted to fill this template right here, this little rectangle, I would now, with the fill selected, and it doesn't matter which one of these are selected, you just have to have the shape tool. When you come into the shape, and I'm going to zoom in here, you're going to notice that when you're in the shape tool that little icon comes up with the 4 little points. So if I select right here on this rectangle tool, and it's going to tell you in these directions here, so it's going to make it easy. Alt or Option are going to draw from the center. Shift is going to be just a straight square, and Space is going to move the square while you're making it. So I'm going to select here, and I'm going to just hold and drag and cover this template up. Now, when I let go of my mouse, it's going to, once I go back to the regular selection tool so I can get the transform controls and the bounding box off, I'm going to see that it's going over this template, but it's not perfect. So what I'm going to do for this assignment is not use any fill color. I'm only going to use a stroke. To turn off the color, if you look right below this, you'll see this one has color, so that's going to fill it. This one is a gradient, and it's going to make it a gradient. And this one is going to make it no fill. And we need no fill because I want to see that you can really fill these objects onto the template directly. You may use any color you'd like for the fill color, but I need for the fill color to be 1 point, okay? Excuse me. You can use any color you like for the stroke, but I'd like you to keep the stroke at 1 point. So if you remember in Photoshop, you had this option bar and it changed with every single thing you did. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the fill. It's on no fill because it has that no line, the red line. And if I have this as selected here, I can see that I can make changes in my option bar. So here's the no fill, and I can select that to make it none. Here's the stroke, so I can select it and I could make it a pretty yellow. And then right next door to that, I can change the point size. And you don't have to worry about any of this except for opacity. You want to make sure it's on 100%. So I'm going to get my shape tool, and this assignment is telling me that if I hold the option, it's going to draw from the center outward. And if I hold the space key, I can move it around. So I'm going to select right here on the template, and I'm going to try to fill this shape all the way. And there it is. There's a little bit off, so I'm going to get this little selection tool, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to pull this down a little. Now, do you see that's not working? I have to move it pretty fast, and right now it's on snap to grid. So if I go to view, and if I turn off snap to point, and if I turn off snap to grid, it's going to make it a lot easier for me to arrange this right on top of the template. See? So I'd like for you to go along and fill all of these little shapes with strokes. Okay? Now we're going to get down here to this rounded rectangle. The rounded rectangle is right underneath the regular rectangle tool. And if I select right here and I drag, do you see it's a square? If I hold the up arrow key on my keyboard, do you see that it's making those corners rounded for me? Now I'm just going to make it a little bigger, and that's just about perfect. So I'm going to get my selection tool, deselect it, because if it's selected, it's going to go right back to it. And I'm going to look, and I'm going to say, well, that doesn't look perfect right here. So I'm just going to move it down a little bit until it's on there just perfect. Okay? If there's a little bit left, that's okay, but get real close as you can. So now I'm using the space bar to get the hand tool to move around. And now I'm going to get the rounded rectangle again. I'm going to select and drag. If I get too big, if I hold the space bar, I can move it to the image, make it a little smaller, just moving in, space bar, move it down, move it out a little bit. Maybe that was too much. Move it in and down with the space bar. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the up arrow and I'm going to make the corners even more rounded. You see? Now it might be going a little bit off of the image, so I'm going to hit the regular selection tool so that I can see where it is, and I always have to hit the regular selection tool once I make my shape, otherwise it's going to try to make a second shape on top. And I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to try to make it work correctly on this template by pulling these little shapes in with the points. Okay? Now we're going to go to the circle, and now to make a straight circle, it's the same as in Photoshop. You go to the elliptical tool. If you hold shift, it's going to make a circle from the edge. And I'm going to delete that. And if I just want the rectangle, I'm going to go ahead and make the rectangle shape. I'm going to hold my shift key to move my shape up. I'm going to make it as close as I can, hold the shift key. I'm going to pull it over a little because it's looking close. And now I'm going to hold this, just pull the mouse in, and there it is, perfectly on that shape. So remember to deselect it when you're done, and don't forget to use the space bar, because the space bar is what you're going to use to get the image to work. So again, I'm selecting and I'm dragging, and I see that I'm close, so I'm going to maybe get this edge to line up a little bit. I see that I need to make it a little bit more rounded, so I'm hitting the up arrow. I'm hitting the space bar so I can move the shape, and now I'm making it a little bit smaller. I'm using the space bar to get it to the right spot, and now I'm making it just a little bit smaller, and I think I need to round the rectangle a little more using the up arrow key, and now I'm going to let go. And if you see this, just say cancel. So now that looks pretty good. So you guys are going to come through and do all of these. The triangle tool you're going to use by going to the polygon tool. And once you get into the polygon tool, you're going to select and drag, and you're going to hold the space bar to bring it down. I'm going to turn it around a little bit because it's losing its proportion. And now I'm going to hit the up arrow to make more points, or the down arrow to make less points. So here's my perfect triangle. Now I'm going to use the space bar to move it over. I'm going to make it bigger, space bar to move it over, and it's going to rotate a little bit. You got to make sure all the lines are square. And it's tricky. Space bar to move it over, make it a little bigger, and then let go. So now this needs to be rotated some. Do you see that? So if I come outside of that little boarding box, I can get the little arrow tool that looks like it's going to rotate it, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit, and then I'm going to have to make it a little bigger. Okay? So this one's tricky. I didn't get it perfect, but you guys will be able to. And again, if you want to make this number of line segments, just make the shape, hit the up arrow, it's going to make more points, and I'm going to have to figure out how many I need. I just need 5. So I'm hitting the down arrow to get the points correct, space bar to move it, make sure it's square, and then I'm going to make it a little bit larger, space bar, smaller. See what I mean? It's tricky, but I know you all can do it. There we go. I'm getting closer. I'm using my space bar now, and I'm going to let go. So it's not perfect. You guys are going to get them a little bit closer than that. Star tool, same thing. You get the star tool, select and drag. If you hold the shift key, it's going to come from the center. Spacebar, you can move it. Up arrow, you can add points. Spacebar, move it. Maybe rotate it a little bit and see if we have enough points. Maybe one more. So you just keep adding and subtracting points, and then move it with the spacebar. Make it a little bigger. Okay? There we go. That's pretty close. Alrighty, I'd like you all to do this for the beginning of this assignment, and then I'd like you to turn this in as stroke _ your last name. Alrighty? Thanks.